There's a question I need you to answer honestly. Would you cry if your boss left? Not like, oh, that's sad, I'll miss them. Actually cry. Like Stanley cried. Stanley, the man who did crossword puzzles during meetings. The man who said out loud to anyone who would listen that he was counting down the days until retirement. That Stanley cried when Michael Scott left. And that should tell you everything. Because we spent 9 seasons laughing at Michael, cringing at Michael, feeling secondhand embarrassment for Michael. But while we were laughing, his branch was quietly outselling every other branch in the company. His people stayed for years when they could have left. They didn't just lose a boss. They lost the man who made a paper company feel like a home, even if he did it by accident. You don't get that by accident. You don't get that by being a joke. So let's talk about what Michael Scott was actually doing, because I think we all missed it. Let's start with the thing that actually matters in business: results. Dunder Mifflin Scranton, Michael's branch, was consistently one of the top-performing branches in the entire company. Not the funniest branch, not the most entertaining branch, the best-selling branch. Think about that. A company with multiple locations across the Northeast, experienced managers, serious people in suits, and the branch run by the guy who declared bankruptcy by just yelling, "I declare bankruptcy," was beating all of them. That's not a coincidence. That's not luck. Something was working. Now, let me show you what wasn't working everywhere else. Remember Charles Minor? He came in season 5, sharp, professional, serious, everything Michael wasn't. Within weeks of Charles taking over, the whole office fell apart. Jim couldn't function. Dwight went rogue. The energy disappeared. The branch that ran itself like a real company started losing. Or think about what happened after Michael left for good. The ratings dropped. But more importantly, watch what happens to the characters. The life goes out of the office. Not because Michael was entertaining, because Michael was the reason people actually wanted to come to work. Here's where most people get it wrong. We think a good boss is someone who is strict, who sets clear expectations, who keeps things professional. And sure, that works on paper, but there's a problem. People don't work for companies. People work for people, and Michael Scott understood this better than anyone. He knew your birthday, not because HR told him, because he actually cared. He knew when you were going through something hard. He knew when you needed to be left alone. He knew when you needed someone to say, "Hey, let's stop working for a second and just be human." That's not incompetence. That's emotional intelligence. And science actually backs this up. There's a famous study from Gallup. They interviewed over 1 million employees across different industries. And the #1 reason people quit their jobs, not salary, not workload, not the commute, their manager. People don't leave companies, they leave managers. Now think about Michael's team. Dwight worked there for years and would have followed Michael anywhere. Jim had every reason to leave and kept staying. Pam turned down opportunities to stay close to that office. Even Stanley, who hated everything, cried when Michael left. Stanley. When is the last time you cried because your boss left? Let's talk about something specific. The beach games episode. Michael takes the whole office to the beach, ostensibly to figure out who should replace him. It turns into chaos, obviously, but something real happens at that beach. Pam, quiet, invisible Pam who never speaks up, walks across hot coals and then stands up in front of everyone and says things she'd been holding inside for years. That moment doesn't happen without Michael. Not because he planned it, but because he created a place where people felt safe enough to eventually find their voice. How many offices do you know where that happens? Now, I want to be fair here. Michael Scott was a terrible manager by every traditional standard. He was inappropriate, constantly. He ignored HR, repeatedly. He made every situation about himself. He was exhausting. If Michael Scott was your real boss, there would be days you'd want to quit on the spot, no question. But here's the distinction that matters. There's a difference between being comfortable to work for and being meaningful to work for. Michael wasn't comfortable, but working for him meant something. You were part of his family. Genuinely. Not in the fake corporate way where they put family on the website, in the way where he shows up at your house when you're sad. In the way where he gives a speech at your wedding even though nobody invited him. In the way where he flies back from Colorado with his new wife just to be there when you have your baby. That's not a boss. That's something rarer. Let me tell you about a real concept in management called psychological safety. It was researched by Amy Edmondson at Harvard Business School. The idea is simple. The best teams are not the ones with the smartest people. They're the ones where people feel safe to speak up, safe to make mistakes, safe to be themselves. Google spent 2 years studying their own teams, trying to figure out what made some teams great and others average. Same conclusion. Psychological safety was the #1 factor. Not talent, not experience, not strategy. Safety. And Michael Scott's office, as chaotic and embarrassing as it was one of the safest places on television. You could be weird there. Dwight proved that. You could be quiet there. Pam proved that. You could be difficult there. Stanley proved that. You could make mistakes there. Kevin proved that every single day. And nobody got left behind. There's a scene in season 4 that I think about more than I should. Michael finds out that Daryl, who works in the warehouse, has been trying to get a raise and nobody's listening. Michael doesn't know Daryl that well. Daryl isn't even in his department, but Michael goes to bat for him anyway. He walks into corporate, makes a fool of himself, gets laughed at, and gets Daryl his raise. No credit, no announcement, just someone needed help, and Michael helped. Here's the thing about the finale. When Michael comes back for Dwight's wedding, he doesn't make a speech. He doesn't make it about himself. He just shows up. And that one moment, after everything, hit harder than almost anything else in the show, because it was proof that he was always real. The jokes were real. The love was real. The caring was real. He wasn't performing. He was just, fully, completely, embarrassingly, him. And maybe that's the actual lesson here. We spend so much time trying to be professional, trying to seem competent, trying to look like we have it together. Keeping distance, being appropriate, following the rules, and our teams feel nothing. Michael broke every rule, and his team felt everything. In the last episode, after Michael is gone, Jim says something quiet to the camera. He says the best thing you can do is find something you love and then find someone who loves the same thing. He's talking about Pam, but he could be talking about Michael, because Michael loved that office. Embarrassingly, loudly, completely. And somehow, against all logic, that was enough. So, was Michael Scott the best boss in TV history? By the metrics that matter on paper? No, he was a disaster, but by the only metric that actually matters. Did his people feel seen, valued, and human? Nobody else comes close. And maybe the most uncomfortable question this show asks is simple. Your boss follows all the rules. Does your team cry when they leave?